Let me tell you something uncomfortable. The person smiling in your face, music, might be rooting for your failure when you turn your back. And if you don't learn to spot it early, you'll keep giving access to people who are quietly draining your power. If this is hitting close to home, pause for 1 second and tap is greater than, music is greater than, like or follow. Not for me, but to remind yourself that awareness is power. They give backhanded compliments, masked as concern. This is usually the first leak in the system if you know how to spot it, because real support feels clean, while fake support always leaves residue. A backhanded compliment isn't praise, it's hierarchy disguised as kindness. It sounds like, "I'm proud of you, I just didn't think you had it in you." Or, is greater than music, is greater than. That's impressive for someone like you. And what they're really doing is slipping a judgment into the wrapping paper. On the surface, it feels positive, but underneath there's a subtle reminder of where they believe you rank. Is greater than music, is greater than. This is not accidental language. This is dominance framing. They are quietly reinforcing a mental position where they see themselves above you, more capable, more experienced, more deserving. People who secretly resent you don't attack directly because music that exposes them. Instead, they plant doubt while pretending to water confidence. They deliver concern that weakens, advice that belittles, praise that shrinks you. Psychologically, this allows them to feel superior without looking hostile. They get to discharge their resentment while maintaining social camouflage. And here's the dangerous part. If you don't recognize music, your nervous system absorbs the message. Over time, you start second-guessing yourself. Music. You replay their words. You unconsciously accept their frame. That's how confidence erosion happens quietly. Backhanded compliments are designed to make you feel grateful and small at the same time. They create a split in your perception. Their being nice is greater than music is greater than, so why do I feel off? That discomfort is your intuition flagging a misalignment. Healthy people celebrate your progress without attaching conditions. They don't sound surprised by your competence. Music. They don't add disclaimers to your success. When someone consistently mixes praise with subtle music insult, it tells you they are threatened by your growth. Your improvement destabilizes their self-image, so they attempt to stabilize it by minimizing yours. This behavior often comes from insecurity, comparison, or unresolved envy. But the reason doesn't matter, the pattern does. Because anyone who needs to lower you in order to feel okay is not safe music proximity. The correct response is not confrontation, it's calibration. You stop oversharing. You reduce emotional access. You stop seeking validation music from that source. You observe, you adjust, and you protect your internal state. Power is not reacting. Power is recognizing the tactic and quietly changing your behavior. Remember, genuine allies don't decorate. Their support is greater than music is greater than with skepticism. They don't wrap doubt in compliments. They don't need to remind you of your music past limits while acknowledging your present success. And once you see this clearly, you stop taking poisoned praise personally, because music, you understand it was never about your ability, it was about their discomfort. With your elevation, they celebrate your setbacks more than your wins. And this one music is subtle because it hides behind sympathy. But once you see it, you music can't unsee it. When something good happens to you, their reaction is muted, delayed, or strangely technical. They nod instead of smile. They say nice instead of that's huge. They pivot the conversation back to themselves. There's no emotional investment in your progress. But when something goes wrong, suddenly they lean in. They ask questions. They offer advice you didn't request. They become animated, engaged, almost music energized. That shift tells you everything. Humans reveal their true alignment through emotional response, not words. Someone who secretly resents you experiences your success as a threat because it disrupts music, the invisible hierarchy they carry in their head. Your growth music forces them to confront their stagnation. So their nervous system is greater than music, is greater than looks for relief. That relief comes when you stumble. Your setback restores balance in their internal scoreboard. That's why their empathy feels performative, while their curiosity during your failures feels real. They aren't comforting you, They're stabilizing themselves. Psychologically, this is called downward comparison. They regulate their self-worth by measuring against someone music who is temporarily lower. It gives them a quiet sense of superiority without having to improve their own life. And here's the dangerous part. If you keep sharing your struggles with someone like this, is greater than music, is greater than they start to expect them. They unconsciously position you as the almost made it person, the one who tries, the one who falls short. That narrative music becomes comfortable for them. So when you actually win, it creates friction. They don't know where to place you anymore. Music, that's why you'll hear things like, just don't get ahead of yourself, or let's see how long it lasts. That's not realism. That's containment. Music. They're trying to cap your momentum. Real allies feel lifted by your victories. They feel inspired. They mirror your excitement. They don't need proof. They don't wait for confirmation. They celebrate immediately because your success doesn't threaten their identity. But hidden haters need you manageable, predictable, slightly beneath them, music. So they emotionally invest in your problems while emotionally distancing from your progress. The correct move here isn't confrontation. It's data, music collection. You stop bringing them good news. You stop giving them front row access to your vulnerable moments. Music. You notice who claps without being prompted. You notice who only shows up when you're bleeding, because support that appears mainly during your failures is not support. Music. It's positioning. And once you understand this, you stop mistaking attention for loyalty. You stop confusing music advice with alignment. You learn to protect your wins quietly and heal privately. Remember, anyone who feels more alive when you're struggling is not music on your team. They are just standing close enough to benefit from your fall. They subtly compete instead of collaborate. And this is where hidden hostility turns strategic. Because on the surface, everything still looks music-friendly. But underneath, there's a silent scoreboard running in their head. Every conversation becomes a comparison. Every achievement turns into a measurement. You share a goal. They immediately mention theirs. Music. You talk about progress. They redirect to how far they've come. It's never direct rivalry. It's quiet one-upmanship. Music, they don't say, I'm competing with you. They just make sure their story lands right after yours, slightly louder, slightly bigger. This happens because your presence activates their insecurity. Music. Instead of building together, they try to outrank you psychologically. Collaboration requires mutual respect. Competition requires hierarchy. And people who secretly dislike you need hierarchy because equality feels threatening. They can't simply be happy, music for you. They have to place themselves somewhere in relation to you. That's why they borrow your ideas, mirror your moves, and music suddenly develop interest in whatever you're pursuing. Not because they love the craft, because music, they can't tolerate being behind. They don't ask how they can support you. They ask questions that feel like curiosity, but are really reconnaissance. They study your pace, your habits, your next steps, then quietly adjust their own so they never feel outpaced. Music. And here's the dangerous part. If you don't recognize this, you start oversharing strategy. You explain your plans, you give music timelines, you reveal weaknesses. Meanwhile, they're not giving you the same transparency. They're extracting while protecting. That imbalance tells you everything. Real collaborators exchange value, hidden competitors collect it. You'll also notice they struggle to give genuine credit. They'll say things like, music, yeah, we both did well, even when you carried the weight. Or, they'll frame your success as a group effort while privately highlighting their own contribution elsewhere. That's reputation management. They don't want you standing alone in your victory because that elevates your status. So they dilute it, is greater than music. Is greater than. Psychologically, this comes from scarcity mindset. They believe there's limited room at the top. So instead of expanding the table, they try to elbow for music position. The correct response is not aggression, it's boundary awareness. You stop sharing blueprints, you keep your moves quiet. You shift from explaining music to executing. You let results speak. Because competition disguised as friendship only survives when you keep feeding music it information. Power is selective disclosure. Power is knowing that not everyone walking beside you is walking with you. Is greater than. Music is greater than. Some are pacing themselves against you. And once you see that pattern, You stop inviting them into your process. Is greater than music. Is greater than. You don't announce milestones. You don't seek validation. You build in silence. Remember, people who truly support you don't race you. They run alongside you. Anyone who needs to beat you, instead of build with you, was never part of your team to begin with. They gather information about you and quietly weaponize it. And this one is especially dangerous because it disguises itself as care, curiosity, or connection. At first, it feels normal. They ask about your past, your struggles, your relationships, your fears. They listen closely. They nod. They remember details. You think finally someone who actually pays attention. But what you don't realize is that not everyone who listens is on your side. Some people aren't bonding with you. They're building a profile. Every weakness you share becomes a future leverage point. Every music mistake becomes stored data. Every insecurity becomes a pressure button. They don't use it right away. That's what makes it strategic. Music, they wait. Then one day, casually, your private story appears in a group conversation. Music, or your insecurity is referenced in a joke. Or your past failure is brought up during a disagreement, and suddenly you feel exposed, small, caught off guard. That wasn't accidental. Is greater than music. Is greater than. That was deployment. Psychologically, this is called covert dominance. They collect intel to maintain control without open confrontation. Is greater than music. Is greater than. It gives them power while keeping their hands clean. And here's the trap. Because music, they gathered it through friendly conversation, you blame yourself for oversharing instead of recognizing the intent behind the extraction. You start thinking, maybe I talked too much, instead of realizing they were asking targeted questions. Real friends, music, don't interrogate your vulnerabilities. They don't keep mental files on your soft spots. They don't revisit your wounds later for positioning. Hidden haters do, because they need advantage. They also tend to repeat your words back to you in altered form, subtly reframing your story to make you look music unstable, dramatic, or incompetent. This is narrative control. They shape how others see you using your own disclosures. That's why you'll notice they love phrases, music like, "Didn't you say you struggle with that?" Or "You told me before that your music not great under pressure." It sounds harmless, but it quietly rewrites your identity music in public. The correct response is not paranoia, it's precision. You stop giving access to unfinished music thoughts. You stop sharing raw emotions with people who haven't earned that level of trust. You keep sensitive information compartmentalized. Music, you speak in generalities instead of specifics. Power is knowing that privacy is protection. Your story is not community property. Music. And once you understand this pattern, you become harder to manipulate because there's music, nothing left to grab onto. Remember, someone who truly supports you doesn't music catalog your weaknesses. They help you strengthen them. Anyone who studies your vulnerabilities is not listening with their heart. Music, they're listening with a strategy. They change behavior when others enter the room. And this one exposes everything music because people can fake words, but they struggle to fake consistency. When it's just you and them, they're warm, music, supportive, engaged. They agree with you. They validate your ideas. But the moment new people arrive, the temperature shifts. Their tone cools. Their body turns away. They interrupt you. They talk over you. They suddenly become sarcastic or dismissive. This isn't mood swing. This is status, music management. They're recalibrating their position in real time based on who's watching. Alone with you is greater than music. Is greater than there's no audience, so they don't need to perform. In groups, hierarchy activates. They start protecting their image by subtly lowering yours. You'll notice small things first. They stop laughing at your jokes. They contradict you over minor details. They reframe your comments like, music. What they mean is, even when you spoke clearly. That's not clarification, that's control. They're signaling to the room that they hold authority over your voice. Psychologically, this comes from social dominance behavior. Is greater than, music is greater than. They feel threatened by your presence in front of others, so they reduce you to elevate themselves. It's a quiet music power play. They don't attack directly because that would look hostile. Instead, they use micro-disrespect, little interruptions, slight eye rolls, subtle exclusion from conversations. And here's the dangerous part. Because it's small, you question yourself. You think maybe you're being sensitive, music, but your nervous system already clocked it. Your body noticed the shift before your mind did. Real allies don't change faces music depending on the room. Their respect stays stable whether you're alone or surrounded by people. Hidden haters are only kind in private because there's nothing to gain socially. In public, they treat you like competition. That tells you music. Their kindness was conditional. The correct response is not calling it out. Emotionally. It's observing and adjusting music access. You stop engaging in group dynamics where they try to position over you. You shorten your responses. You keep your composure. You let them reveal themselves through pattern repetition. Because consistency is character, and inconsistency is strategy. Power here is emotional neutrality. You don't chase their approval. You don't mirror their behavior. You simply take note and move accordingly. There is greater than music, is greater than. Remember, anyone who respects you only in private doesn't respect you at all. They respect convenience. And once you see that, you stop giving music them front row access to your presence. They minimize your achievements while amplifying their own. And this is the final confirmation because it reveals how deeply threatened they are by your progress. You tell them something meaningful you accomplished, and they respond with a soft, nice emphasis, then immediately pivot to their story. Is greater than, music is greater than. Or they frame your success as luck, timing, or help from others, while describing their own wins as the result of discipline, sacrifice, and brilliance. Music. That contrast is not accidental, it's identity protection. Your growth challenges the story they tell themselves about who's ahead, who's smarter, who's more capable, so they rewrite reality in their favor. They shrink your victories and enlarge theirs to preserve psychological rank. You'll hear phrases like, anyone could have done that, or, music, yeah, but it's not that hard, right after you share something you worked for. Meanwhile, their achievements come with music context, explanation, and emotional emphasis. This creates a subtle narrative where you are average and they are exceptional. And if you stay around this long enough, it starts to seep into your own self-perception. That's the danger. They don't need to openly insult you, they just quietly downgrade you while upgrading themselves. This is greater than music is greater than psychologically. This comes from fragile self-esteem. People who are secure don't compete with your success. They expand with it. But people who secretly resent you need to remain the strong one is greater than music is greater than in the dynamic. So they make sure your wins feel small and theirs feel monumental. They also love to remind you of your past mistakes, right when you're moving forward, bringing up music old failures during moments of progress. That's not reflection, that's anchoring. They're trying to keep you, music, psychologically tied to an outdated version of yourself, because the current version threatens them. The music correct response here isn't proving anything, it's disengaging from comparison. Music, you stop announcing milestones, you stop seeking recognition from that source, you let results exist without commentary. You learn that validation from insecure people always comes with a cost. Power is silent confidence. Power is not needing your victories, acknowledged by someone who benefits from ignoring them, because real allies don't ration praise. They don't act surprised by your competence. They don't feel smaller when you grow. And once you understand this pattern, is greater than music is greater than, you stop explaining your progress. You stop justifying your success. You build quietly and let distance music do the talking. Remember, anyone who has to reduce you in order to feel big is already telling you exactly where they stand.